Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155 from UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not.
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcasts. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championship, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel De Leon. Hopefully your day went well. More specifically, hopefully your Super Bowl weekend went well. At the time of this recording, you know the results of the Super Bowl. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Bucs, they ended up winning, and Tom Brady ends up winning his 7th Super Bowl trophy and his fifth Super Bowl MVP trophy. So if you are in Tampa Bay or you're a Tom Brady fan, you feel pretty good about yourself. If you are in Kansas City, you don't feel all that bueno, and there are a lot of memes going on right now about Patrick Mahomes, because Patrick Mahomes, he didn't do that well in the Super Bowl. He really didn't. I say his offensive line did well for him. They did their job. It was more of a sense of Patrick Mahomes, his ability to make a decision with the ball was just too slow. It was too slow for the Super Bowl, and I've seen him do a lot more better, but, you know, in the biggest night of his career, yes, he won the Super Bowl, and he is the defending champion, but, you know what, he lost to Brady. Maybe next year we could see Brady Mahomes too, an official passing of the torch. Maybe. That's a huge maybe for next year. So, even though you might not be the biggest football fan in the world, it was definitely a spectacle to watch. It really was. I'm just going to put this out there right now. Hopefully, all of you stay healthy, because I ate a gigantic box of pizza, actually. A giant box of pizza with me and my friends. We had some nachos. We had some empanadas. Don't worry. We were safe. We're all safe. We're all healthy. So we could share food, okay? So we had a Super Bowl party. All of us are packed right now in terms of food. All of us are right now just resting in our beds like proper teddy bears. So while all of us had a chance to rest, I had a chance to go keep up with ONE Championship, which leads to me discussing ONE Championship Unbreakable II. ONE Championship Unbreakable II, we get the hype package immediately. Mauro Cerilli versus AbdulBasir Vagabov. The hype package shows up, and one of the first things I spot in this hype package is that Cerilli, he's wearing a Super Saiyan Dragon Ball Goku shirts, and as you see these two fighters, they're working out. You got Vagabov just wearing, plain old workout Nike workout clothes. Cerilli's working out. He's punching the bag really hard. He's doing some body kicks. He's lifting weights with his Super Saiyan Goku shirt. And then there's this slow-mo shot of Cerilli, and you can see smoke coming out of the body of Cerilli as if he's going Ultra Instinct. And I cannot tell if they CGI'd smoke. Because Cerilli, it's like, oh man, this guy, he's been working out so much that he's literally smoking in the gym. His power levels is too high. I find that very hilarious, because there's only, for all I know, one way to actually have the smoking effect going on, and it be real. If any of you have ever been to a hot sauna, or in it's not called a bath, it's called, steam room. So yeah. So I've been to steam rooms for the better part of 3.5-4 hours, not straight, but I've essentially taken breaks every 15-40 minutes. So I'll go to a steam room, take a break, go back in, take a break, go back in, and every time I would come out, there'd be this aura of smoke coming out of me, as if I'm going Ultra Instinct, Super Saiyan people. And even when I go inside my car, and there's so much smoke coming out of my body that my windshield becomes all blurry. That's how hot I am, literally. And so I don't know what's up with Cerilli. I'm guessing he was cutting weights. Maybe he was cutting weight in the steam room. We didn't see that. All we saw was you hear the voiceover guy, Mauro Cerilli, one of the best strikers out there in the world. world champion in striking. And then just shows Cerilli standing up with his Goku shirt, smoke coming out of his body. I don't know. And then we have AbdulBasir Vagabov. So while Cerilli gets smoke, Vagabov gets sweat. He gets slow-mo sweat, camera zooming in on his face, and be like, this ONE Championship Unbreakable II. Cerilli, Vagabov, get ready for the most exciting action ever. Here's Cerilli, smoking literally, and here's Vagabov with a lot of sweat dripping through his face, because that's what you want to see. You were watching Unbreakable ONE Championships, and it's like, it's really corny. It's very ridiculous. There wasn't that much talking happening in the actual hype package. It's just them looking all weird looking in the gym. It's hard to explain. I love how over the top these hype packages are. And then we get introduced to the show by everyone's favorite Michael Schiavello, and not Mitch Wilson, but Chatri Situtong. Yes, the man, the legend. Chatri is there, and he is being all awkward. He's, you know why? You know how awkward he is? His audio levels are off. His left hand is frozen still, and he doesn't know where to look at when he's talking, which is strange because I've seen this guy do this many times before. But Chatri here, he was just super awkward on the screen, and he's only here for this moment. You will never see that guy again for the rest of the show. It's like, hello, I am Michael Schiavello. This is Chatri Situtong, and this is what's gonna happen for Unbreakable II. Like Chatri was on screen for no more than maybe a minute and 25 seconds. And Chatri, within a minute and 25 seconds, just struggles being a commentator or struggles being a personality on TV. It's very bizarre. So Michael Schiavello, he's introducing us. Welcome to the show, Unbreakable II ONE Championship. And so Schiavello says, and I quote, the main event is a battle between two martial arts monsters, two absolute behemoths, two battering rams. I am excited for this. So, and then it cuts to Chatri, it cuts to Schiavello looking at Chatri. Chatri, he doesn't know where to look at. Like, he's looking at the camera, and then when he has to go make a point, he's then looking at Michael Schiavello, but his microphone doesn't follow his mouth. And not only that, his microphone is very low. It's much more, it's like down to the middle of his chest. Because if you see how Michael Schiavello, or if you've seen any other ESPN analyst, sports analyst, or a news reporter in entire life, you know when they're holding the microphone, they're kind of leaning it towards their mouth. What Chatri does is that he's holding it right in the down the middle of his chest, and then he's having a conversation with Michael Schiavello. It goes like this, and his audio levels are off. This is how it sounds like. Why, yes, we are having an amazing action here in ONE Championship Unbreakable, and quite frankly, I think we're going to have a night full of fun action. We're going to see some great title changes happening. I'm excited for this. ONE Championship proceeds to give a show that many fans could go and enjoy, love doing, you know how it is, and, you know, the audio levels are off. His left hand is frozen shut. He's constantly looking between the camera and Michael Schiavello. And Michael Schiavello has to cover this, and he tries his best to cover this. But his way of covering it is him yelling even louder. And Schiavello here proceeds to lose his mind. He goes and say, it's a night! Because there's a graphics card. And the graphics card shows like all the fighters. Like here's Sovannahry Em, here's Choi Jeong Yun, here's Ngalani, here's Umar King. He's saying all these names. And Schiavello is like, this is a night full of action here. It's great. He literally says this. It's a night full of knockout artists. Like, look at that. Look there. That's a knockout artist. That's also a knockout artist. There's like, oh man, it is so crazy because he starts being like, that's a knockout artist. That's a knockout artist. Chen Rui is a knockout artist against Quan Juanil, who's a knockout artist, and who's fighting after Delfino, who's a knockout artist. It's a night full of artists who are being knocked out, and he just goes off the rails, and Chatri looks frozen. Michael Schiavello is just speaking nonsense at this point, and it continues to go on, and he continues to say more quotable lines, but I find it hilarious. We get Ultra Instinct Cerilli, we got Super Sweaty Vagabov, we got Michael Schiavello saying, it's a battle between two martial arts monsters, and I'm really thinking of the Monstars from the Space Jam movie. And if you're somebody who doesn't watch mixed martial arts, and then you're seeing Michael Chiavello, and he's like, it's a battle between two absolute behemoths. Like, I would be disappointed if I didn't see, like, two Monstars on TV, okay? I'm just gonna put this out there. Like, he's hyping it so much. And then you see these, like, two buff dudes in Ngalani and Kane, that you're kind of disappointed. You kind of are. Two battering rams. And we have Chatri Sititong here. Doesn't know who to talk to. His eyes are wandering off. You know, he's holding the microphone in a very firm grip. He's pretty much saying, I don't want to be here. And that's all you see on Chatri. Mitch Wilson teleports in later on. But let's get to the first fight of the night here. We have Alain Ngalani versus Umar King. It's in the heavyweight division. It is an MMA bout. Mitch Wilson's omnipotent voice comes in because the last Chatri in his minute and 25 seconds, that's all we see of the guy. Like, he disappears to the void. He's probably filming. He's filming another documentary of himself, or he's filming The Apprentice, or he's trying to pep up for his next great TED Talk. I don't know what chapter he's doing, but he's probably doing something along those lines. So Michael Chiavello, when he's doing the introduction for the fighter, he's like, Ngalani here, great champion. He's a great kickboxer. His striking ability is amazing. Isn't that right, Dragon? And then you hear Mitch Wilson's voice, like, yeah, I'm Mitch Wilson. I am here. And by the way, Ngalani versus Kane, this is going to be a really fun matchup between two guys who are knockout artists. And then you hear Chiavello say, it's a battle between two knockout artists. And as they are both, like, Kane and Ngalani, they're both taking their time, making their way into the cage. And Chiavello, as hyped as he is, he says, Mitch Wilson, you're like a little kid in Christmas because you're about to see two big behemoths go at each other. And I'm thinking right now, oh my goodness, dude, I don't know any kid in my entire life whose Christmas present, like, he opens it up and he sees these two jack dudes going at it. I don't know that's really a Christmas gift that, like, kids really want. But I know Chiavello, he's hyped about this fight to the point where he's going near insanity. So Ngalani versus Kane here. This is a battle between the two large men. And in this bout here, you can hear Michael Chiavello's voice, the disappointment he is having in terms of the early stages of this fight here. And no, he's pretty much disappointed in this fight in general. Because as this fight starts, Ngalani, he's throwing inside leg kicks. Because Umar King, he is a grappler, he's a wrestler, Ngalani, kickboxer. So Ngalani, he's throwing inside leg kicks, while Kane is threatening him with potential takedowns, but Ngalani is able to wear him off. So Ngalani throws a series of body kicks and then backs off. So body kick, back off, one jab, back off. So we have, for the most part, 3.5 minutes of Ngalani just throwing out these kicks on Kane, and Kane landing no strikes at all. You can hear the disappointment in Michael Chiavello as he's like in the commentary booth, and he's essentially saying, we got these two fighters here, these two knockout artists, they're looking at each other, thinking about what happens next, but I'm telling you right now, these two guys are proper bulls, and like they're not doing anything. Like there's a lot of inactivity happening in this bout here. Mitch Wilson has to cover Chiavello's disappointment, or his sound of disappointment, by saying, did you know Umar King is a former champion in multiple sports? And then Michael Chiavello, for some reason, he says, Alain Ngalani versus Umar King is like what would happen if you put two bulls in a kettle in a pond. And I'm just like, wait, what? I probably butchered that, but he said something along the lines of that. So Chiavello then goes on to say, look at Umar King. He's got proper bananas for shoulders. Proper bananas for shoulders. I have never heard anyone ever say that. Can you imagine going to LeBron James being like, dude, you got bananas for shoulders? And I mean, like, what do you mean by bananas for shoulders? Like, are they slippery? I don't know. Are they lights? Like, are they sweet tasting? Like, what do you mean? What does you have proper bananas for shoulders even means? If he said he had proper bowling balls or boulders on his shoulders, that would make sense. Alright then. But to say you got proper bananas for shoulders, and then it leads to Umar King and Ngalani is looking at each other, just poking each other, with Mitch Wilson and Chiavello just saying, oh man, who do you think is bigger? Hey, who do you think is going to win an arm wrestling match? Umar King or Ngalani? And then Mitch Wilson says, I'm going to give the strength advantage for Kane in an arm wrestling match, but I'm going to give the athletic advantage for Ngalani in terms of his speed in the arm wrestling. I still wouldn't know who would win in an arm wrestling bout, but definitely it would be an amazing bout. And Chevello continues saying, these are two bulls, battering rams, martial arts monsters. He pretty much like repeats the same exact things he said earlier in the show. Even Rich Franklin, whose voice just randomly pops in, and he starts saying, I don't know which guy weighs more. Can you imagine how big these two guys are? Because they're pretty darn big. Just what is going on here? The show just started. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back after a short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we're back with ONE Championship's Unbreakable II review. The referee is able to tell Ngalani and Kane, alright then, so pretty much what he says is, there's a lot of inactivity here, you guys gotta be a lot more active, do something. And I thought to myself, okay, no, they actually are doing something. Ngalani is doing something. He is constantly pressuring Kane with body kicks and leg kicks. All because it's not Chevello's wet dream of, look at these two behemoths going at it. Wow. All because it's not that scenario doesn't mean that they're not being active. These two fighters are indeed being active. Umar King is being inactive, but that's more of a case of Ngalani pressuring Kane with leg kicks. So I don't think it was right for the referee to tell them, hey, you got to be a lot more active here. Because, really, it's not like they're not doing anything, because they kind of are. So referee, he tells them to do something. Kane finally pressures onto Ngalani, landing some underhook strikes, then presses him onto the cage. Kane proceeds to put all his weight down onto the body of Ngalani. Kane continues to do some more ground and pound work onto Ngalani. Referee comes in. He separates the two fighters. Umar King wins the fight via first round TKO. So congratulations for Umar King then. And Michael Chevello gets what he's always wanted. And that is a proper scrap fight between these two guys. And then we move on to the second bout of the night, which is Sovannahry Em versus Choi Jeong Yun. It is a catchweight MMA bout. I've been seeing a whole lot of catchweight bouts recently in ONE Championship. I don't know why, and I don't know why the commentary team aren't making a big deal of it. They should make a big deal of it. Is there a penalty for catchweight? I mean, is there a penalty for a fighter missing weight? Why are there so many catchweight bouts? But essentially, this bout really was a flyweight bout. It was a flyweight bout under catchweight because one fighter lost weight. We don't know which fighter did. All we know is that commentary team, they don't really care. They're just hyped about Sovannahry Em versus Yun. So Em immediately gets a takedown in within 7 seconds of the bout. 7 seconds. Em controls her the entire first round. First round easy goes to Sovannahry Em. Nothing really to say about the first round here. Just Sovannahry Em controlling her to the ground. Choi Jeong Yun, she just didn't do anything. She really didn't. She was laid on her back the entire time in the first round, being hit by stiff strikes from top position. And then we get to the second round. Second round starts with Sovannahry Em. She ducks under a right hand of Yun. Goes in, shoots in for a double leg takedown, successfully gets it. Em immediately gets onto mount, but Yun reverses the position, then presses her onto the cage. The crowd are cheering. The commentary team is like, whoa! Like Michael Chevello is like, whoa! She actually did it! She reversed out! That's amazing! I've never seen that done to Sovannahry Em. And then Sovannahry Em reverses her immediately. They switch positions, and she gets yet another takedown in with a leg trip. Em traps Yun's arm with a crucifix position and ground and pounds her until the referee stops the fight. Winner via ground and pound TKO in the second round goes to Sovannahry Em. Dominant performance there. Choi Jeong Yun, she's only 22 years old. She's only 22 years old, and what really stood out to me in this fight here is that none of their records were shown in the bottom graphic when they were being introduced for some reason. I'm not really sure why they did that, but they're like, Choi Jeong Yun here, she is a world kickboxing champion. And I'm like, she is? Really? We don't see her record, but she looks very green. She seems really green, and obviously Sovannahry Em, she is both Cambodian and from America, so she definitely trained herself to be a more adept fighter in MMA, while Choi Jeong Yun, sadly, I wasn't able to see her kickboxing skills when she was making her way down to the cage. Mitch Wilson was hyping up her kickboxing, saying, oh man, she's a total prodigy, she's got all the tools to be an awesome striker in this division, but we never got to see her striking because I think ONE Championship right now, as time develops and as they try to garner more and more Western fighters, like Sovannahry Em, or fighters who implement aspects of wrestling and grappling into their skill sets, I think we're going to see this shift of more grapplers or more wrestlers being dominant in ONE Championship's women's divisions. Because, yes, Angela Lee, she can definitely wrestle with the very best of them. She is a grappler at 24 years old, world champion. But then we also have a lot of fighters who compete amongst the top 5 of the Atomweight and the Strider division, who are mostly striker-based, like strikers first, grappler secondary. And it's really very interesting to see somebody like Fogat and M, who are two fighters who are obviously grapplers first, strikers second, be successful at ONE Championships. I'll be very interested to see how the Asian fighters adapt to the wrestling. And so the next match of our ONE Championship card here, we got Mikaylo Ketchuvic versus Bioblots Asyof. It is a light heavyweight kickboxing bout. And oh my goodness, this has to be up there with Corey Sandhagen's flying knee in terms of one of the most vicious knockouts in all of mixed martial arts. It definitely one of the most vicious knockouts out there in ONE Championship history. And it's a front runner right now for one of the best knockouts in the year of 2021. Without a doubt about it. And that's not me just overhyping ONE Championship. No. This right hand by Asyof onto Ketchuvic was one of the most scariest things I've ever seen in an MMA contest. So, just to go over the fight here. Ketchuvic, he's significantly a lot more taller than his opponent. He's about like 3.5 inch, almost a 4 inch taller than Asyof. So Ketchuvic, throughout this entire fight here, he's just poking Asyof. He's constantly poking Asyof. Ketchuvic is pretty much winning in all the exchanges. All of them, he's landing some clean strikes here. And with how the fight was going, if this fight were to go up by decision, easily Ketchuvic would have won. He would have won due to like sheer volume of striking and also him just picking apart his opponents. The one issue with Ketchuvic was the fact that he was primarily a headhunter. He would throw out some kicks early in the fight, but to the instances that he was throwing a kick, he was always receiving a counter punch by Asyof. So early in the fights, within the 40-second mark of the first round, Ketchuvic, he would throw in a right body kick, and then Asyof would catch it. He'd catch it and do a leg trip, and from that moment there, the fight completely changed. We had Ketchuvic who was mixing his leg kicks and body kicks with some strikes and doing some headhunting, and then after Asyof catches the kick and does a leg trip, then Ketchuvic just primarily becomes a boxer. So he then transitions from being a kickboxer with an all-around poking abilities to just a guy who's primarily poking with jabbing skills. And so Ketchuvic begins to really chase Asyof, because it went from two fighters meeting center of the cage and Ketchuvic just picking apart Asyof, with Asyof chasing Ketchuvic, to Ketchuvic now chasing Asyof. So with Ketchuvic chasing Asyof does the same thing that Corey Sandhagen did with Frankie Edgar, in that because he's constantly backing away and he's forcing his opponent to come towards him, Asyof is pretty much dictating the pace of the fight. He's dictating how the fight is going on, who's chasing who, and it's been shown early on that Asyof could land a couple of clean counter strikes once he is able to go find those openings in the kicks. And since he knows that Ketchuvic wants to throw his leg kicks, but he was really hesitant in doing so after the leg trip, he just kept waiting. Asyof just kept waiting for these leg kicks, All right. And then as Asyof is chasing after as Ketchuvic is chasing after Asyof, Ketchuvic, whenever he would load up a strike, he would put his shoulders down. Like, that's a tell. He would put his shoulders down, and he would go lead in for a 3-jab combination. And so for Asyof, he noticed that. He knows that Ketchuvic would put his arms down initially at first, then bring them up for a 3-punch combination when he chases. So what does happen is that he leads on Ketchuvic to come towards him to commit to a 50-50 exchange. And since Ketchuvic here, he's really good in fighting middle and outside the pocket, but he struggles fighting inside the pockets, which leads to Asyof. He baits in Ketchuvic to start jabbing him while being inside the pockets. And so this leads to Asyof. First of all, he lands a body punch with his right, a left hook, which is blocked, and then he timed it perfectly where Ketchuvic was about to counter with his left. But Asyof was fast enough that he was able to go and catch Ketchuvic in the middle of his right hook, knock him out. It's an insane knockout, one of the most insane knockouts I've ever seen. It proper is like cartoon video game levels, because you see like in the video games where the guy gets knocked out, the mouth guard just goes flying, gives a cartoon-looking face, like the mouth is like waving and shaking, like in slow motion. It looks like the most like ridiculous thing you can see. But oh my goodness, this guy's mouth guard goes flying. His head bounces off the mat, then his body ricochets back up to his knees, and then falls back down. Oh my goodness, I have never seen that. Because usually for knockouts, when you get clipped, you fall down. But in this instance, it was the guy got clipped, falls down, and then he falls to the mat so hard that his body just like sprung up again, and then he fell backward, then towards the side, and it was insane. If none of you have ever seen this bout yet, I recommend you. It's Mikaylo Ketchuvic versus Bioblots Asyof. It's from ONE Championship Unbreakable II. One of the most insane knockouts I've ever seen. And when you see it, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, wow. Mitch Wilson, he immediately said this, I quote this. He says, "Good golly, Miss Molly, what a knockout." Thank you, Mitch Wilson. We also had Rich Franklin, who's also doing commentary. The dude was just shocked. He was stunned. Michael Chiavello, I don't get what's up with this guy, but he was more ecstatic from the first bout between the two heavyweights, more so than the knockouts. It's strange, because like this guy is like, he's super hyped over Sovannahry Em taking down Yun. He was super hyped over the two heavyweights meeting early in the opening bouts. He was super hyped talking about the matches coming up in this card and even the upcoming matches. But yet, when the knockout happened, Michael Chiavello was like, "Oh wow, devastating knockout right there. Okay." I don't know what it takes to impress this guy. I'm not sure, but wow, that was an insane knockout. And definitely I had to go rewatch that over and over again just to like take it all in. We then get a hype package for April, and we get Chatri Sitong. He actually does come back. So Chatri Sitong, he comes back, and his microphone is still in the middle of his chest, far away from his mouth, and he says, "Forget March Madness, let's talk about April Madness." Yeah, you got there, Chatri. Boom! That's gonna be trending. Forget March Madness. It's all about April Madness. And then when we see the cards coming in for April, so I'll announce all the fights that have just been announced here. We have Adriano Moraes versus Demetrius Johnson for the Flyweight World Championship. Eddie Alvarez versus Luis Papicos. Christian Lee versus Timothy Nashikin for the Lightweight World Championship. And Ong Lang Song versus Vitaly Bigdash. If you don't know who Ong Lang Song is, I recommend you do. He is without doubt one of the best fighters in the entire world. He truly is, and we're going to see a really fun matchup with him, with Vitaly. I know a lot of people have been keeping up with Demetrius Johnson. I see Demetrius Johnson has to be the biggest name out there currently for ONE Championship, next to Ong Lang Song and maybe Brandon Vera, maybe. But Demetrius Johnson, he'll be defending his Flyweight World Championship MMA belt against Adriano Moraes. And with the way how ONE Championships, how they promote and how they build Demetrius Johnson, yeah, this dude relative and compared to everyone else, this guy comes across as a superstar. Demetrius Johnson, how he is presented in ONE Championship, is the exact opposite of how he's presented in UFC. Because with the way how Chapter talks about this and Michael Chiavello, he's like, yep, the Demetrius Johnson, oh my goodness, can you imagine this guy, this amazing talent, he'll be competing amongst the very, like, he is on top of Aung Lang Song in terms of pedigree, which is weird because Aung Lang Song, he himself has some pedigree also. What I find very strange with Aung Lang Song is the fact that he was a double world champion. He was the double world champion. He was both ONE Championship's middleweight and light heavyweight champion. And he also defeated the heavyweight champion. He was defending his light heavyweight belt against Brandon Vera. So, you can say that he is, like, I forgot, like, the Shadow Dark champion for the heavyweight division also. So, he lost his belt, the middleweight belt, to Reiner de Ridder back in October 30, 2020. But he hasn't defended the light heavyweight belt since 2018. He's been champion for, 1,019 days. He's been light heavyweight champion for 1,019 days. He has not defended the belts in 3 years. And now he'll be competing at middleweight yet again against Vitali. Even though he just lost the middleweight belt back in 2020 a couple months ago in October. So I'm not sure what the current status is for the UFC's light heavyweight division. Actually, if you look at the rankings on their website, they don't have a rankings for the light heavyweights, and they don't have a rankings for the heavyweight division. So until they stack up their light heavyweight division, I don't see Aung Lang Song defending that belt anytime soon. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Come back after a short break here, continuing my review of ONE Championship's Unbreakable II.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. And so let's go to the next fight of the card here, which to me was one of the most exciting fights of the entire night, and was one of the most exciting fights I've seen in the year 2021, which is Chen Rui versus Quan Juanil. It is an MMA bout in the bantamweight division, and to explain this bout is essentially, imagine two fighters going out there not blocking at all, and just throwing out a large flurry of strikes to one another, and it's insane. These two dudes are just going out there throwing bombs, bomb after bomb after bomb, and in the first round, it was hard to determine who was actually winning in any of these exchanges. It was really difficult. You could tell who was winning in the exchanges by the time Quan Juanil landed a takedown, because, oh my goodness, Chen Rui came to this fight as, okay, this guy's a striker. Quan Juanil is coming in as the freestyle wrestler. So Chen Rui, I think he was a lot more focused in on the takedowns and defensive wrestling and prepping up, defending takedown and getting ready with the ground submission and all that stuff. But Quan Juanil, he just came out like a house of fire, man. He just came in, threw out bomb after bomb, flying knees, like spinning, like he threw out several spinning back elbows, and they all landed in this fight. Flying forearms, he would shoot for double leg takedown, bring him to the cage, then take him down onto the ground, do some ground pound action, and this is where you can obviously tell that there's a huge disparity between the grappling difference, the skill in grappling and wrestling, between Il and Rui, because immediately when Il got him to the ground,
he really got in top position, and it looked like if this was in the UFC or even Bellator, this fight would have ended easily in the first round. But it didn't. We had Eel taking to the ground, going on mount position, and laying down these flurry of like elbows and forearms and hammer fists. The dude was like screaming and yelling in every single shot he did as he was on mount position. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, oh my goodness, referee, stop the fight, stop the fight. But no, the referee didn't stop the fight, even though Chen Rui was doing a really bad job defending himself, really. And if this is any other promotion, the fight would have ended early. But it didn't end like that. Instead, we had Eel laying down, which was like, I think, a minute and 30 seconds straight of just ground and pound action. And it wasn't like, oh man, he just hits you on top and then stops, then hits you on top. No, it is continuous. 1.5 minutes of this guy hitting elbow after elbow, forearm smash, hammer fist, over and over again on Chen Rui. Chen Rui, he just eating these shots. And it came to a point that Quan Juanil, he just gassed himself out in the ground pounding. He threw out such a high volley of strikes from top position that he slowed down. And Chen Rui, being a proper Iron Man that he is this guy is insane, a proper Iron Jaw. He takes it all in. Then he leans over to the back, his back onto the cage, and brings himself back up. And then they go at it for another 20 more seconds. They just continue to strike with one another until the bell sounds, and it was insane. It was one of those craziest first rounds I've ever seen in my entire life watching mixed martial arts. I recommend all of you to watch it. It's Chen Rui versus Quan Juanil. And then we get to the second round. So second round, I'm thinking right now, okay, obviously Eel wins. He won the first round. Let's see how the second round goes. And they just pick it up again. No blocking, no guarding. Both these guys hitting headshot after headshot with one another. The commentary team were talking about it in the sense that these two guys have knocked out their opponents in the past with the strikes they're doing here. But neither of them are budgeting. Neither of them. So it was interesting because it leads to a point where Quan Juanil, this guy, they're both being headhunters essentially at this point. They're both being headhunters, throwing out strikes to the face. Like Quan Juanil lands two spinning back elbows on Rui, and Rui just eats it. And the commentary team, they start joking like, you know what? Is Chen Rui ropey-doping here? Because this guy is eating so many shots to the face. And Quan Juanil is obviously getting tired from this, that it might be a weird strategy. And they start giggling to themselves because no, Chen Rui, he's not rope-a-doping this. He's just eating all these shots. And he's even trying to deliver some on Quan Juanil. The thing though is, Quan Juanil is just hitting him with a lot more. And then it came to a point where Quan Juanil was like, okay, enough being a headhunter. I'm going to go for body shots. So boom, left hand body shot, right hand body shot. Then goes for a left jab to a right hand body shot, and that's the end of the fight. After all the strikes to the face, over 100 shots to the head, what ended the fight were 3 body shots by Quan Juanil onto Chen Rui, winning the bout in the second round via KO. Quan Juanil, this was an insane bout, an absolute crazy bout. It was essentially 7.5 minutes of two dudes going at it, with nothing but a flurry of strikes. Very little kicks going on, honestly. Very little kicks. It was not a technical fight. It wasn't very calculating. It was an incredibly reckless fight that if many other fighters were to watch this fight, they'd be like, oh my goodness, wow, these fighters are fighting so recklessly. It's so cool, but it's like very dangerous. It's the exact opposite of the cop fight that happened in this past weekend at UFC Fight Night, where the cop fight was this. We got one guy who's fighting so overly strategically that it was a complete turnoff to the commentary team, to the judges, to the fans. This guy fought so safe and so calculating that there was no way. Like, he fought calculating in terms of striking, because the guy is a pure striker, but he's only striking when he knows he can land it. And okay, I get it, but because of his inactivity, the judges didn't score in his favor. And the guy was like, what the heck, what? And then if you look at the stats for that fight, with the cop fight, he fought so proficient, but because he was so inactive in that fight, that it failed the eye test. In order to win a fight, you have to pass the eye test. Are you visually winning? And then you also have to pass the stat test. Statistically, were you winning? And for Cop, the answer was no. But for Quan Juanil, he, unlike Cop, was hyperactive, hyper efficient. The dude missed very little shots. His wrestling was on point, and I'm excited for the future of both these fighters. I've never seen a guy at bantamweight who is as tough, who has taken as many shots as Chen Rui, and I'm excited to see what the future holds for both of these fighters, who, by the way, are both in their early to mid-20s, so they both have bright futures ahead of them. And so the next contest is Daichi Takanaka versus Evanildo Delfino. It is a flyweight MMA bout, and this bout here, unlike the last bout, which was all striking and some vicious ground and pound action, this was a lot more of a technical grappling match. So Takanaka goes in for a left body kick. Also, no, Delfino, he's wearing the Dragon Ball Goku colors. Like, legitimately, like, he's actually using, like, the orange and the pattern and how it's designed. It's obviously based on Dragon Ball, so 2 thumbs up there. Takanaka goes in for a left body kick, but Delfino catches it and presses him onto the cage. The two are changing clinching positions onto the cage multiple times over. Takanaka then gets a leg trip into half guard position. Delfino is doing a really good job controlling Takanaka from bottom with him trapping him in the half guard position. There really was a point where it was like a minute and 15 seconds straight of Delfino controlling Takanaka from bottom. And I was thinking to myself, hey ref, go in there. Break them up. Like, there's like very little activity happening here. But after a while, Takanaka is able to actually go transition himself into side control, and he circles back into backpack position, but Delfino gets up. Takanaka clinches with him yet again and gets a takedown into full guard position. First round goes to Takanaka for superior ground control. And the commentary team, Mauro Cerilli, he's specifically talking about this, where he's saying, Daichi Takanaka, this guy is like the king. He is the master of the rear naked choke. And I'm thinking about this right now because I still remember that it was not Matt Serra. It was, Matt Hughes. So Matt Hughes talked about this where he says, like, if you ever get tapped out to a rear naked choke, which is a brown belt level move, man, you suck. And then we got this guy here whose entire shtick is that he specifically goes for the rear naked choke in every fight. Because Takanaka, he is on top of Delfino for a very long time, not through just the first round, but through all rounds, first, second, and third, and he does very little to no ground and pound action, and the few moments that he is striking, there are definitely holes in his game. So the second round starts. Delfino does land a couple headshots in the first 30 seconds, so Delfino's winning in the 30-second 50-50 exchanges, but Takanaka carries him for a takedown, and once again, it's interesting. So Delfino leaps on to Takanaka, and he himself tries to go for a guillotine choke, but Takanaka grabs him, and he hurls him up in the air, then presses him onto the cage. So he then goes to half guard position, to side control position. Delfino is able to escape, but Takanaka yet again tries to circle back into backmount position, and this time, he is successful. Takanaka, through the better parts of 3 minutes and 45 seconds, is just him trying to cinch in a rear naked choke. I put here, Delfino is surprisingly surviving, because there were moments in this fight here where Takanaka does cinch in the rear naked choke. Clean choke, but Delfino isn't tapping out. And when you look at it, when you look at the necks between Takanaka and Delfino has a really small neck. He's got a proper turtleneck in him, man. He's keeping his chin down. And so you got this choke in, and Mauro Cerilli and Mitch Chilson, they're like, oh my goodness, he's got the choke in. How is he not tapping out? And it was like 3.5 minutes of this dude trying to get out and trying to battle through the arms and trying to go fight the hands and trying to get out of the rear naked choke position. And the bell saves him. The bell saves him. Second round easily goes to Takanaka. And then the narrative going to the third round is, alright, who is more tired going to that third round? Because in the second round, by the tail end of the second round, it looks like Takanaka was getting tired, that his activity when he in the backpack position was slowly fading away. And it looked like, okay, Takanaka's going to go to this third round tired because he exerted so much energy trying to go for that submission victory. It looks like the third round should go towards the direction of Delfino. But instead, Takanaka immediately clinches with Delfino, then circles around to his back and just leaps on his back as if he's like Yoda and Delfino's Luke Skywalker. He's on his back, backpack position, and he tries to cinch in a rear naked choke on a standing Delfino. Delfino slowly fades down. He fades down, and then they go back to the original position back in the tail end of the second round with Takanaka trying to cinch in a rear naked choke. There are moments where you're like, okay, this guy's tapping out. This guy's tapping out. He ain't tapping out. What's going on here? So Takanaka finally gets the rear naked choke in, officially cinched Delfino is not fighting the hands. Delfino taps out. Congratulations for Daichi Takanaka for winning the fight via submission rear naked choke in the third round. Delfino did an awesome job defending himself. I put on notes. He did a really good job defending himself. It just, he couldn't get out of that back position enough. He did the best he could getting out of that position, but Delfino was way too susceptible to takedowns. Delfino did his very best to defend the rear naked choke, and honestly, he did a really darn good job. It's just the fact that he was so susceptible to the takedowns that at some point, one of those chokes are going to cinch in, and he tapped out in the third round. So, more so than any other fight, this truly was a grappling showcase, so congratulations yet again for Daichi Takanaka winning via submission. We then go to the main event, Mauro Cerilli versus AbdulBasir Vagabov. Vagabov, he's coming in from Dagestan. His nickname is the Dagestan Machine. And as he is making his way to the cage, he has this blue shirt. He's wearing this blue shirt, and then you have all these patches. It's as if, you know, if you've ever like watched NASCAR, you see these like guys, they are wearing these jackets, and there's a whole lot of patches with different logos on it. Yeah, so his shirt has all these logos, and in the middle, it says Street Fights, and it is in the same exact logo as the video game Street Fighter. So that to me just like really stood out. So we got Cerilli here, who's coming in being like, yeah, he's wearing the Goku Dragon Ball shirts, and then we have Vagabov here wearing the Street Fighter inspired shirt. We also get yet another hype package, and for Vagabov in the background, you see this gigantic poster wall, or like this gigantic wall with Fedor Emelianenko's face on it, looking all scary looking. And with the way how the hype package is for Vagabov is cut very awkwardly, because the tempo of it goes, hey, he speaks Russian, so he's not speaking English here, but they have the subtitles in the bottom hand of the screen, and it says, it's like Vagabov saying, I'm not going into this fight with a strategy. I don't need strategy. I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna knock him out. And I'm like, yeah, like I love this. I love these like overly cinematic style fights, because as he's saying, I'm gonna go knock him out, you hear this orchestral score in the background as if it's like 300. It's like, oh, and it's him slowly punching in the gym. And what's really interesting about this, despite the fact that it's the main event, it's got the less budgets compared to every other fight, every other main event fight in the past. Because for every other main event fight in the past, you always see them like running around mountains or going through forest areas. But they essentially repeat the same exact like footage for both Vagabov and Cerilli over and over again. And it's them punching the exact same way in their gym. I enjoy their presentation in the sense that both these fighters are being presented as no nonsense, simple. They're going to go in there, they're going to destroy their opponents, and then for Michael Chiavello, for both of these fighters, as they're making their way to the cage ring, he's like, prepare for demolition devastation! Coming back after the short break, I'll be covering the main event, Mauro Cerilli versus AbdulBasir Vagabov. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And we are back for the main event, Mauro Cerilli versus AbdulBasir Vagabov. It is an MMA bout in the heavyweight division. So the first round goes at it with Mauro Cerilli. At first, he was fighting very defensively. He was the one backing away, and Vagabov chasing after him. So Vagabov going into this fight is going through a 10-fight win streak, and usually how he wins most of his bouts is that he dives in, shoots in there, being hyperactive, gets a takedown in, does some ground pound action. But Vagabov, as he is chasing after Cerilli, the way how this fight went off really was if Takanaka in the last bout was respecting Delfino's striking ability. That's what happened here, because Vagabov was trying to go shoot in for clinching. He's trying to go gauge in the distance, trying to get into close range, but he couldn't do so. Mauro Cerilli had the length and reach advantage over Vagabov, and this dude hits like a proper truck. And so Vagabov just couldn't go and shoot in there for a takedown because he knew that if he got there, he'd be clipped. And unlike some scenarios where there are a lot of fights that I see where I see a wrestler versus a striker, and I'm thinking to myself, dude, you've taken the hard shots from this guy. You can go in there and you are fine being clipped by some of these shots because you can go and survive those shots and get a takedown in. But in this scenario here, since Cerilli hit so hard, Vagabov was very hesitant in the early phase of the first round. Vagabov is chasing after Cerilli, and then after every attempt he tries to go in there for a close range bout, for clinch work, for a takedown, Cerilli either stops it or he goes and clips him with an uppercut. So Vagabov's strategy was, which is ironic because in the hype package, Vagabov, like the camera goes to him and he's saying, going to this fight, I don't need a strategy. I'm just going to go there and hit him really hard and knock him out first round. And then this first round goes off, and Vagabov, he can't wrestle him. He's struggling trying to get into clinch. He can't properly get into good striking distance with the guy because of Cerilli's length. Cerilli just is hitting Vagabov before he can even do anything in the middle of the pocket. So Cerilli nullifying Vagabov's close range game. Cerilli now becomes the guy who's going on the aggro, being the offensive person here. It transitions from AbdulBasir Vagabov chasing after Cerilli and going for a takedown to Vagabov now backing away from Cerilli. And I think Vagabov's new strategy coming into this second half of the first round was, okay, me being on the offense here, I cannot get a takedown in, but Cerilli has a tendency of winding up these large right overhands. So I'm going to wait for him to come towards me. He's going to go and try for a big strike. I'm going to duck down and get a takedown, which almost did happen here. Technically, Vagabov was successful in a takedown, but it turned out really bad for him because Vagabov, he gets a takedown in after ducking a strike from Cerilli, and then they both go down. Cerilli immediately stands up. Cerilli grabs onto the head of Vagabov and hits a vicious knee to the face of Vagabov, and then Cerilli is just like unloading strikes onto Vagabov. And so the one successful takedown Vagabov got, it resulted with him getting a knee to the face and getting several shots to the face as well when his back was onto the cage. So it didn't pan out for Vagabov in the first round. First round easily goes to Mauro Cerilli. And then we get to the second round here. Vagabov, he's now trying to think here, okay, what can I do here? I guess I just have to wait for him to come towards me, shoot him for a takedown yet again, because it kind of worked for him when he got that takedown in, that first time in the first round. But this time, Cerilli, he's now utilizing leg kicks. In the first round, he used some body kicks and some high kicks, but for the most part, they whiffed. But in this scenario here, he's chasing after Vagabov, and then Cerilli goes for a left overhand, that's blocked, then goes to a right leg kick, hitting the left thigh of Vagabov. Vagabov, he's obviously hurt from this, and he just falls down like a sack of potatoes. He gets hit on his left leg, falls down, his left leg essentially goes limp, he turtles up, Cerilli goes over to Vagabov and starts laying in some ground and pound action. Honestly, Vagabov, he really isn't in that bad of a position. It's more of a sense that Vagabov isn't really doing anything to defend himself because he's not moving around, he's not trying to hold on to his arms, he's not trying to go change position here. Vagabov is just there, curled up position, turtle position. Cerilli rained down strikes onto the back of the head of Vagabov, and Mauro Cerilli wins the fight via TKO in the second round. Going into this fight, both fighters were talking about Brandon Vera, the heavyweight champion, and we could now see, consider the fact that there are no rankings for both the light heavyweight and the heavyweight division, and both of these fighters were discussing Brandon Vera, we could see a real possibility of Mauro Cerilli versus Brandon Vera. That's a real possibility of happening down the line. I would love to see that. I think Mauro Cerilli can definitely give Brandon Vera an actual run for his title. Because Brandon Vera, if you look at his win-loss record, you can be like, oh my gosh, this guy's going through a huge winning streak, except for his one fight against Alain Song. But Brandon Vera, all the opponents he's faced at the heavyweight division at ONE Championships, they all have either like losing records, or they're incredibly inexperienced, or they only have one win in their name, or they're not champions in their respective sports in their own country. It's very strange. Like, the booking of Brandon Vera is like, he is presented as if he's a big time superstar, but the competition he's facing is fairly weak. And that's not me disrespecting the fighters he's faced. It's just that he hasn't faced legitimate good competition relative to the other champions, whether it be the bantamweight division or the middleweight division. There's a lot more competition there compared to the heavyweight division. And so Brandon Vera, he's kind of been coasting by, with the exception of his one loss to Aung Song. But now we could see Brandon Vera versus Mauro Cerilli, and that's a fight I'm incredibly excited to go watch for. And that was ONE Championship Unbreakable II. And looking on the card here, there were no fights that ended by decision. All fights ended via KO or a stoppage. And yeah, I gotta agree with Michael Schiavella here. This really was a night of knockout power, knockout honors, and high octane action. From beginning to end here, this card was incredibly fun to watch. All the fights were... Okay, so one issue I do have with ONE Championships, as this also goes for like UFC and Bellator, in that there is so much advertisements happening here. There's so much advertisements. There's so much hype, like videos being shown here. There's so many commercials for their future fights and their future cards that it does take away from the actual fights in themselves, because there is a 30-minute interlude in between fights, sometimes like 35 minutes. So there were not that many fights in this card, yet it felt like a long show because there was so many in-between stuff that was happening. For instance, in the main event here, we had a hype package in the beginning of the show with a commentary team talking about the fights, hyping it up. Then in the middle of the show, they're hyping up the main events. We see another hype package, and then before a commercial break, towards our main event, we get a hype package. Then after that, then both fighters, Cerilli and Vagabov, get their own individual hype packages. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, can we just get to the fight here? I would really want to see that. But other than the presentation and the way how their shows are being run, I do enjoy the fights. The fights by themselves are really darn good, and I still recommend anybody to go and watch ONE Championship Events. Once again, they are available on Bleacher Report the day after the show happens. ONE Championship Events are readily available for you on Bleacher Report on YouTube. And so let's move on to the news brief portion of the podcast here. This is being written in by Jed Meshu, coming from MMAfight.com. The morning reports Don Cerrone on fight against former teammate Diego Sanchez. He says, and I quote, "This should be a fun, highlight reel fight for me." Diego Sanchez is looking for a dream fight against Don Cerrone to end his career on, but according to Cowboy, it may turn out to be a nightmare for Sanchez. Last week it was reported that Sanchez and Cerrone would be facing off against one another in a welterweight bout for UFC event on May 8th. Prior to this bout announcements, Cerrone had said he was looking to stop competing at welterweight and return to the lightweight division, but speaking on his YouTube channel over the weekend, Cerrone explains why he's taking one more welterweight fight before dropping down. He goes on to say, and I quote, "Everyone was booked up. All the fights were booked. Yeah, 55 is what I wanted to do. Then Diego Sanchez went and I guess showed up to the UFC and begged and pleaded with them to make me his retirement fight. So they called me and they asked me and I said, sure. With this fight, yeah, it is at 170, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get big. I'm going to treat it like a 155-pound fight. I'm going to try and walk in there at 170 or 168, try and be on weight, fight at 170, and just be ready on moving my body down to 155. That's the plan." So Sanchez, who, by the way, him and Clay Guida are in the Hall of Fame because of that spectacular fight that they had with one another years ago. But Diego Sanchez, as of late, he's definitely somebody who does need to be checked up on in terms of mental health, and he's definitely a fighter that I do not want to see. I just don't. I think Diego Sanchez has been over the hill for years. It's uncomfortable watching Diego Sanchez fights because this guy, it's not even that he's not even an exciting fighter. He isn't. He's just this walking German fighter who isn't that good of a boxer, who's not that good of an MMA fighter, who just takes all these shots to the face, and he's never really a threat to any of his opponents. So Diego Sanchez, he's just there for a paycheck. And Don Cerrone goes on to say, he says it's two legends going at it. I don't think so. He talked a lot when I left Jackson Wink because they used to be teammates there. And now he did the same thing and left. It's funny. I was just doing what I had to do, built my own gym, trained my own people, starting making this mold, which I think was the right move to do in my career, and he had a lot to say about it. He said he wanted to fight me, so here's his chance. Be careful what you wish for. So yeah, this should be a highlight reel fight for me. So Diego Sanchez, he is 2-2 since 2018, and one of those wins comes from a DQ. So you can say, like, oh, he's actually like 1-2 since 2018. But you know what? I'm happy for Diego Sanchez. If this truly is his retirement fights, alright, you're fighting against Donald Cerrone. That is a dream fight. Dream fight in terms of name value, but in terms of the quality of fights, I'm not expecting fireworks. This fight will obviously be in the main card for that UFC events. It's probably going to be a UFC Fight Night event or UFC on ESPN event. And if this truly is Diego Sanchez's last fights, you know what? Thank you for everything you've done for us. Your fight against Clay Guida is one of the most exciting bouts I've ever seen, ever. And it really did help me become an MMA fan. But oh my goodness, please, after this fight against Donald Cerrone, don't fight again. Seriously, don't fight again. I would be perfectly happy not seeing a Diego Sanchez fight ever again. And so coming off a loss from Alexander Volkov, Alistair Overeem finally releases a statement on Instagram. He goes on to say, "You're a true warrior, Alexander Volkov. Congrats on the win." Overeem wrote, "Yesterday wasn't my night. I could not recover from that punch in the first round after I broke my nose. My highest priority right now is to heal up and spend some time, well-deserved time with my family. I'll be back in the gym soon though. Thank you for all the supports. I see the comments. You guys are the best." So, what's the future of Alistair Overeem? He says he's got one last run in him. But from this loss, though, he has to go through yet another long winning streak, which will take years to accumulate in order for him to go get another title fight. So, Alistair Overeem's future, I can see right now this guy retiring within the next 2 years. That's safe to say he'll retire within the next 2 years. If he doesn't retire next year, with the way how Alistair Overeem's run currently is going right now with the UFC, the guy will just keep on competing against fighters who are just outside of top 5. He'll be fighting against rank number 7, rank number 8 dudes. It will take some time for Overeem to get back up there and compete amongst the top 5 yet again for the UFC's heavyweight division. And I really do believe Overeem will retire within the next 2 years. So Diego Sanchez, he's retiring soon. Also Overeem, he's going to retire relatively soon. So hopefully those two fighters, they will not continue fighting, because I don't enjoy seeing these two guys who are way past their prime still trying to compete at a higher level. Alright, so let's end off with something kind of weird here. So yeah, Michael Chandler, he reviews Dustin Poirier's hot sauce as like he puts a hot sauce on this is on Twitter. He puts a hot sauce on a wing, and then he says like it's really good, and like he trashes on it. So yeah, I guess that's a way of calling out Dustin Poirier. Yeah, man, your hot sauce is whatever. Alright. Is that what we're doing now? I'm waiting for a fighter to go out there and just like if they're ever matched up against Conor McGregor, they'll be like, you know what? I don't like your proper 12. Your proper 12 sucks. And I'll be watching that. And I'll be like, oh my goodness, whoa, dude, you totally destroyed it, man. You said his beer is bad. Wow. What kind of trash talking is this? Oh my goodness. Michael Chandler reviewing Dustin Poirier's hot sauce? That's mind games, yo. Yeah, proper mind games. Sure, whatever. So that's Michael Chandler trying to call out Dustin Poirier through talking smack about his hot sauce. Coming up, we do have a UFC event. We have UFC 258, Kamaru Usman versus Gilbert Burns. And we also have ONE Championship's Unbreakable III coming up. Stam Fairtex versus Elena Rosonia in the Atomweight division. So we got 2 major events coming up. And also next week, it is announced that Bellator will make an announcement on what their schedule is for the year 2021. It's an announcement for announcements. Whatever. But at least Bellator, we have something coming up from them other than just speculation all the time. So with that being said, this podcast will come to a close. All I gotta say is thank you. Thank you for listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask you, please remember to subscribe to this show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.